All right, it's Dave and Tiff podcast coming underway here on another week into June. And we've talked a little bit about baseball here and there, but today we're going to spend a little bit more time with baseball because we wanted to make this show kind of a celebration of the 40th anniversary of that 1980 University of Hawaii baseball team that made it to the College World Series. So joining us today, we'll have two players from that team. One will be relief pitcher Sam Kakazu, and the other will be shortstop Eric Tokunaga, who was a member of the College World Series All-Tournament team that year. So he's also the Farrington High School baseball coach. So with Eric, we'll talk a little bit, obviously, about the World Series, but also Farrington. And with Sam, what's interesting is that he's considered the official historian of this College World Series baseball 1980 team. So it'll be exciting to talk with them. And Tiff, you know, before we get into all the UH baseball stuff, let's kind of lean on baseball. And we've talked a little bit in previous episodes about Major League Baseball possibly having been the one sport to come back, and it looks like it may be the last sport to come back, if at all. And we saw something on the draft recently that kind of, I don't know, might lean to some skepticism as to whether we'll have a season.
Yeah, I mean, during the first year or the first round of the first year draft on Thursday rather, that Carl Ravitch was talking with Rob Manfred, the commissioner, and he told the commission, 100% we're going to play. And then earlier today, here on Monday, everyone's been backpedaling, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be a season. And we've gone into this many times on this podcast that we felt that of the major sports that baseball was going to have the most difficult time to return, just because of a 162 game season and having to figure out a way to pay the players, what they should be owed, even if it's going to be a shortened season. And it's a very tough situation. And unfortunately, the sport is going to be losing out. And for a sport that was practically beginning to lose fans and a lot of younger fans, having something like this is not going to help your sport to get those fans back or gain new fans.
If you look at the history of Major League Baseball, all of the major sports, when I say major, you have NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL, they've each had, over recent memory, some element of labor stoppage, a strike, what have you. But Major League Baseball has had the most. And sometimes if you don't dig into all the stats and all the reasonings why, that would be something that sort of, puts the red flags, if you will. Why is it that Major League Baseball has had the most issues in terms of labor relations over the most recent history upon which this has occurred? And there can be so many different factors, but I don't have the answer to that. But the fact that sport has had the most tells you a little bit of something, that we've had different commissioners, we've had different heads of the players union, but yet we haven't seemed to be able to get a duo that seems to be able to kind of work together. And it seems like this whole situation here is going to be just as
Hello.
bad. Oh, it's my phone. Hello.
Well, and it's something that we felt where baseball would have the hardest of times with the other sports because they hadn't started their season. Basketball has come back with a plan in place. Hockey's come back with a plan in place. Earlier this weekend, the MLS announced that they're going to come back and they're going to do sort of a World Cup style format to have their season, even though it was just about to start. And then, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic began and they had to cancel their season. But it just seems football has a plan in place for the most part. It's just baseball, because there's so many games and it's just the toughest sport, it seems, where people can try to agree as to when the season will start.
And that goes back to a little bit of the trust, obviously. Like anything else, you can be at odds. Two groups can be at odds. You see that in politics all the time. But if there's some element of respect or mutual understanding, or at least a sense of trust that, both sides have kind of, open to different ideas and concepts and are willing to talk and work things out. It might take a long time, but I think if there's at least an element of trust there, then maybe, you can see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. But it seems now that light is just diminishing and diminishing with MLB. But I think baseball fans obviously are hoping that this can come underway. I find it interesting though that the sports that don't have as much money to deal with can get underway quicker. You know, like MLS, UFC, they could get underway quicker without as much, because there's just not as much money in the pot. Mm-hmm. Money in the pot always swells itself. Whether it's a family going over an inheritance or anything, the more there is, the more hands are in there that wants to pull what is theirs, and that always becomes problematic.
Well, and you have so many deals with television and those type of contracts, whether they're regional or network, and then to see TBS has come out and said earlier the past week that they had $1 billion negotiation, they had a contract. So it just seems odd that everyone's been arguing about when this season's going to start, if there is going to be a season, and all of a sudden TBS comes out and says, "Oh, here's our contract for the world for postseason to be on our station." So it's just odd where the argument is money, and yet we can find ways for a certain cable entity to come across and be a part of MLB in the postseason, if we're even going to have a postseason.
Well, let's talk to greater things about baseball. And as the highlight of our show has been the fact that we're celebrating 40 years of the anniversary, 40 years since that 1980 College World Series team made it to the World Series for the University of Hawaii. And we have one of our first guests coming up, Eric Tokunaga, I believe is in our waiting room. So let's see if we can get him connected. Eric Tokunaga was the starting shortstop on that team of 1980, and also is currently the head coach of Farrington High School. And I don't know if Eric can hear us. Eric, can you hear us? Well, you know, we're connecting via Zoom. So every time we do this, it's always, let's see if we can get the connection rolling. His connection is a little challenged. Hopefully we'll get him on. Eric, whenever you can hear us, just chime in there. Eric, and then, hey, Eric, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Hey, thanks for joining us, Eric. And well, obviously, congratulations with the program you've continued to develop now with Farrington High School. But I wanted you to join us, obviously, to talk about that 1980 College World Series year, as well as the tournament itself. You were the starting shortstop and that team. But before we get to that, let's catch up with you a little bit. What has your life been in a nutshell since post-UH baseball playing career up until now?
Well, actually, I stayed in the game pretty much all the way, you know, like playing AGA, and I was coaching, but mostly I started scouting, you know, professional baseball, and that's kind of like been my passion since I've ended my playing days. So that's like a whole new chapter, you know, in my baseball career.
And you've continued into, I heard about you scouting. What was kind of the, I don't know, did you, like, what is the best part about scouting? Discovering that raw talent that maybe no one else has seen? Or is it just kind of the day-to-day of just watching players, watching games, and seeing all these different kind of levels of talent? Which was kind of the fun part for you?
Well, actually, for me, what I got involved with scouting because I realized at one point that, you know, the players from Hawaii, like, they weren't getting, you know, like, opportunities to play professional baseball, like, because I had a lot of friends who went on to get, you know, play in the pros. When they came back, I would always hear them say that, you know, there are a lot of guys that weren't good, or there are a lot of players in Hawaii that were better than the guys they played against. So I just started, you know, trying to see what's the process, you know what I mean, like how you can get drafted and stuff like that. And so that's why I started really trying to pursue it. And like, so now today when you look at it, it's like, you know, I think it's a reality for a lot of high school players where, you know, if they're good enough, or they have the drive, the ambition, or the, you know, the dream to be a professional baseball player, it can happen for them, you know. So that's a positive.
Well, we'll get into obviously coaching over at Farrington, but let's get to kind of the fun stuff now. Is that the 1980 year? Now, refresh my memory. That infield of that 1980 team, you had you at short. I believe it was Kimo Perkins at third. Was it Thad Reese at second and Howard Deshevsky at first?
Yeah, that's the infield right there.
And was that pretty much the infield throughout the whole season, or was there some tweaking along the way, but leading up to WAC season play and all that?
Oh, it was like no, it wasn't the infield that we started off with. It was like, we had a lot of good players on the team. And Wade Mauricio was a really good player. I mean, he easily could have been in the anywhere playing on the field, and we had Les Kakazu. He was also one of our big guns on the team. So we had a lot of other players that really could have played. So we had a lot of talent, and it just so happened that at the end that particular group of players, we just played well together, and so we started winning, and so that's how we ended up.
What would you say at what point in the season, because I hear always coaches tell this about, part of the key to success is if you have that middle of the lineup kind of set and the infield kind of set. So, and you hear about the great Dodger infield of the 70s that was, intact for so many years. When did this group kind of set itself and kind of take its way? Was it the start of the WAC season?
Yeah, sort of like, little, I would say mid-season, a little past the mid-season when we started the WAC. But one of the big key players for us was Jay Ertl, because he carried our team, on his back at some point for a long time, actually, because, I mean, he hit like 10 home runs. You hit 10 home runs at UH, that's like, even though I know we played some games on the road, but he carried our team. And then our freshman players, they just started performing. I mean, like Greg, Oni, and all our pitchers, Krim, Duquette, Alan Lane, Joe Lono, they're all freshmen, and they did awesome, So once they started, getting the hang of it, and they started playing, and something happened. We just started winning, like the year before, and we just kept going.
Eric, when did you feel that this team had something special? Not to say that you guys had a chance to make it to Omaha or make it to a regional, but when did you feel that this team had something special?
Well, like the year before was the real special team, because we had like probably the best talented team, UH ever had, with all these, like Tatsuno and Ramey, John Hansen, and all these guys, so, like we were used to winning. It was the 2 previous years, we won so many games, and so we just knew that we were going to win somewhere or another, you know what I mean? So we knew we was going to be good, and we knew that, it's just a matter of, getting hot at the right time at the end, because the year before we got eliminated in the regional, so we had a real good taste of what it's like, to be in the playoffs at the end of the season. So when we got there the next time around, we were ready. We weren't like scared or nervous or whatever.
Joining us today is Eric Tokunaga, a member of the starting lineup for that 1980 University of Hawaii College World Series team. Eric also made it as the all-tournament team for that College World Series. Now, for you personally, when you guys got to the Omaha, did you get into the zone, or personally, did you kind of play at a different level than you had been all year? Or was that kind of par for the course for you?
I don't really feel like, I always talk about it with my friends and my other, it's just that, I think it's a matter of really, like, it's like, when the big games are coming around, when the chips are down, you just focus a little bit more, but you don't, like, I don't get nervous or afraid of not playing well, stuff like that. You just play, and for some reason, sometimes, you just, things just happen. Because in the regionals before that, only I only had one hit in 3 games. I thought I was going to get benched going into the World Series. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, and I played just as hard in the regionals like I did in the World Series. And, you know, in one tournament I had 1 hit, and the other tournament I had 8 hits. So it really didn't, you know, it's just a matter of how you play the game. You just got to play to win every time, and just, you know, accept the ups and the downs.
Gee, that is a remarkable turnaround. Now, would Coach Les actually, like, I mean, you just mentioned that you thought you were going to get benched, but a lot of times coaches will keep the lineup. You know, they know maybe some guys might be struggling, but they'll keep the lineup because they don't want to change anything that late into the season, particularly going into such a big tournament as the College World Series. But would Coach Les potentially change lineups if he felt someone was on a slump?
Well, at that point, not really, but, you know, it's just in the back of your mind. I remember, like, I think Kimo Perkins didn't have a good regional too, and we were both talking with each other and said, "Oh, we got to do something." I think combined, maybe we only had like 2-3 hits in the regional, so we, you know, like, we were ready for the World Series. You know what I mean? Just to redeem ourselves. But like I said, you know, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, you know, you might have a great tournament, you might not. I mean, the greatest players in the world, you know, they go through that too. So you just got to play to win, play hard every pitch.
Hey, I got to ask you this, because
Eric,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Dave. Eric, do you remember that first experience you had when you whether it was walking to the stadium or getting to Rosenblatt? Do you remember your first thoughts, your first experience of coming up to the facility and just be like, wow, we as a team, we finally made it to Omaha?
Well, you know, like I said, the year before we played in the regionals in Arizona, and that was like a real intimidating atmosphere. But the one thing I remember is when I walked on the field the first time, the infield was so nice that I felt like I wasn't gonna make one error because our field at UH was horrible, you know. So when I seen the field out there, it was so nice. Like, it's like I felt confident that I wasn't gonna miss any balls.
You know, Eric, I got to ask this question, and I sorry I interrupted Tiff a little while ago, but I had read that because, you know, athletes, particularly baseball players, are moderately superstitious, that you wore the same undershirt, either was it for every game throughout the year or your entire UH career, the same orange-sleeved undershirt. Is there any truth to that?
I think I wore my same shirt the whole year. Not my whole career, but I would say, like, and I know I wasn't the only one. We all wore the same. You know, we didn't have a lot of, you know, equipment back then. We had the worst hats in the nation. You know, like, so, you know, we just wore whatever they gave us pretty much. But I had one orange shirt I used to wear all the time.
Any memorabilia that you kept from that College World Series?
Well, you know, they gave us like a you know, like a plaque and stuff. So yeah, I got that, you know. But other than that, they didn't give you much, you know, just some proclamations or whatever. But, you know, I think the one thing I got is that the plaque, and I think maybe a participation type of thing, but, you know. Yeah, not really too much.
I gotta add, now let's talk a little bit about your Farrington team, your program. You became the head coach over at Farrington and congratulations, 2018, you win the OIA. When you first got there, what did you see in the baseball program? And then with that, what as a head coach you felt you had to kind of do to kind of change the program around a little bit?
Well, first of all, the big reason why I was coaching at Farrington was the principal was, you know, Mr. Carganilla. He's a friend of mine, and you know, I really believed in his, you know, his direction, his goals and stuff. So, and I went to, you know, he got me on the Farrington staff, and I told him I'll help him out whichever way I can, which was really to, you know, go coach the baseball team. He thought I was crazy at the time, but I know that Farrington had tremendous athletes on the campus, and I was, if we could get just a small number of them playing, and then of course, I found out that of course they don't have the little league programs like they had when we were growing up and stuff. So it was hard, but you know what, the kids were very responsive. They work hard. They try to give it all they got. And I had to make baseball a priority for them too. I mean, that's because it's a hard game. You got to practice a lot, dedicate a lot of time. So that was one of the things that that the mindset had to change a little bit. But other than that, the environment, the facilities, everything was really good. So it wasn't as hard as people think,
Eric Tokunaga joining us, a member of that, starting member of that 1980 College World Series University of Hawaii baseball team. Last question, and this is just because, when I was growing up and I was watching you guys play at University of Hawaii, the first thing I knew I was going to be going to McKinley High School. I saw, hey, there's a McKinley guy playing in the University of Hawaii. And the year before 1980, Ron Nomura was a senior. The two of you guys, were part of great McKinley high school teams. And when you became the coach at Farrington, I thought, God, it'd be great if Coach Eric could maybe coach McKinley. I mean, that's selfish thoughts, mind you. But did you and Ron Nomura ever back in the day kind of thought, hey, we should get that, we should coach McKinley, see if we can bring him back to the glory of the 70s?
Oh, that's I don't know. Like I said earlier that my passion was scouting. So, it's like I gave up. I coached ever since I got out of high school. So, coaching, I felt like, that was like a dead end for me, but I really wanted to pursue a career in scouting. And so coaching was really wasn't a thing in my mind until I, actually got to Farrington. But, and I'm still scouting too. So it's still my passion. I want to still make sure that the players that deserve to the opportunity, they're going to get that opportunity to be a professional baseball player. But coaching is also can be gratifying too, and I enjoy what I do, but to go to McKinley and back to my alma mater, that's gonna be a long-term commitment, and I'm headed towards the sunset, you know what I mean? So I don't think I can get that energy to do that long-term commitment. I mean, it's going to be a process, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Farrington is very glad to have you. You brought that program, and you guys moving up to Division I. So, I mean, great things are coming up for the Farrington program. And thank you for joining us here to kind of celebrate 40 years since the College World Series. Eric Tokunaga, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, David.
All righty, Eric Tokunaga, shortstop on that 1980 team. And we're going to go straight into, because we got our next guest coming up, who was a relief pitcher on that pitching staff for the University of Hawaii 1980 team, and that's Sam Kakazu. So let's see if we can get him on board. And Sam was waiting a little bit. So Sam, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Sam?
Yes, I can.
All right, we can hear you, Sam. Thanks for waiting. We totally appreciate it.
No problem.
And you're joined here by me, Dave Kawada, and Tiff Wells. And let's start off this, Sam. We just talked with Eric Tokunaga, but we wanted to catch up with you a little bit, like kind of in a capsule. What has happened to you since your playing days at University of Hawaii?
Well, after my bachelor's, I went straight into the master's program, counseling and guidance. And so after that, I became a school counselor. So I retired in 2015. Yeah. And then I transitioned into U.S. Department of Agriculture because I grew up on a farm. So I'm heavily involved with trying to promote ag in Hawaii now.
Wow. So you went into DOE, and you were talking last time, we were talking on the phone, I think a couple of weeks ago, about the College World Series. But what are some of the memories that first come to mind when you think about that time?
Well, people talk to you over the years, and what I tell them from my experience is just the whole process. People talk about the World Series, but that was the first year in the WAC, and then we go to the Central Regional in Texas, Austin, And then some of the ways we got there, you know, just that whole ride, a 20-day ride was the thing. And once you get there, it was a really, even though that was, 40 years ago, it was handled very professionally. It was an awesome experience.
You know, and you brought up the regional, and people forget how tough that regional was. I mean, you had to defeat Texas at Texas, right, I believe?
Yes, that's correct. And what was interesting is we started off playing against, one of our own Waipao High School grads, Alan Maria. So, you know, that was the first game. And then the second game, we played against Louisiana Tech. And then the third game, what had happened was that Louisiana Tech coach had asked or lobbied with the NCAA to move their fan base, because they used to be behind the opponent's team. It was called the Wild Bunch, and they all had kazoos, very intimidating. And he got them to move over to their side. Otherwise, I think it would have been a little different experience. That was pretty nuts.
Tiff asked once earlier with Eric, but describe the atmosphere, if you will, of going into Omaha. First time for you guys, because Hawaii had been to regionals before, right, in the previous years, but this is the first time to a College World Series going to Omaha. Describe the ambiance, the energy, the environment, if you will, about going there.
Well, the thing is, you know, Omaha is a small town, or it was at that time. And so it's like their big thing, you know, every year. So they put a lot into it. So every day there was an event. So the thing about it is, it would have been tough to just stay around the hotel, because when you win, you rest a day. You win again, you rest a day. But that's not the way it was. Every day there was something. There was a breakfast from Fellowship of Christian Athletes. There was the University of Nebraska Omaha nurses hosted us to a picnic. Next day, you had Bowie Kuhn, Commissioner of Major League Baseball, hosted us in a breakfast or luncheon. And that's when all of the 8 teams were there. So that was pretty interesting, because you don't usually sit next to 8, schools and their representatives. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Sam, you mentioned. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, that's it.
My question was, you go back to the Central Regional, and you talked about the Kazoos with the La Tech fans. You beat them 2-1. You make it to the final at UT Austin. You play the Longhorns in Austin. Talk about winning on the road in a hostile environment to get you guys to Omaha, and what was it like because over the years, Hawaii teams have historically had problems winning on the road in big games, and this was arguably one of the biggest games in Rainbow Warrior baseball history.
Yeah, that environment, although I mentioned the Wild Bunch, it wasn't as intimidating as the year before in Tucson. I mean, that was really tough, and that's what we lost there. And so it's just, it's just a matter of people doing their job, and it went down to like the last inning. Thad Reese, I just spoke to him recently, opposite field home run. That was amazing. That got us to the series, And it's one of those things. I remember we all sat on the field turf after the game, and that's when it started to sink in. Even though we didn't know what that meant. We had never been there. We said, well, we're going to Omaha. Then we looked around, what does that mean? Kind of thing. Yeah.
Hey, Sam, now you were, by the way, Sam Kakazu joining us, a member of the pitching staff on that 1980 University of Hawaii College World Series baseball team. Sam, on that pitching staff, going into the 1980 season, I even remember the previous year you have Derek Tatsuno. He's, the stud, right? The ace, the All-American. He leaves. So I remember even thinking, oh, this 1980 team, when you lose a star like that, I mean, there's an the expectations either are a big question mark or there's going to be a drop. And then you combine the fact that the team loses, I think I read 7 position players from the previous year as well. So nobody knew how Chuck Krim was going to perform. Nobody knew how Brian Duquette, 2 freshmen, were going to perform. The freshmen did turn out to be a great asset to the team, but for you, member of the pitching staff, going into 1980, losing Tatsuno and all these other players as a pitching staff, what was your expectations going into the season?
Well, it's not a good equation. I mean, you lose that many players that we used to produce a lot of runs on the 79 team, so that's part of the equation. The other thing about it is we lost Gene Smith. That's our stopper. That's our closer. Okay. And so was Tots, and then, some of the other starters, and then Gene Smith. And that was a good equation. Now with them, we lose them. It's like, well, we just got to take it. The thing about it is we had a really good relationship between the players, in that whole era. So you kind of just deal with it. It's not like something like we turn on each other or we were insecure or anything like that. Bottom line is having fun. We're having fun. And obviously when you start winning, it gets more fun.
Okay,
Sam, you mentioned.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dave. Sam, you mentioned after you guys beat Texas that you guys are on the field turf, and Coach Les tells you guys, "Oh, we're going to Omaha," and you're like, "Oh, great!" What does that really mean? You guys get to Omaha, and it's such a legendary facility. It's no longer there. It's now replaced with TD Ameritrade. But walking up to Rosenblatt, whether it was for batting practice or for the first game, do you remember any of those experiences and what you felt like when you came up to the stadium?
Well, a couple of things. Every school is hosted by a civic club. That's part of the real class act of that particular event. So the Concord Club of Omaha hosted us, took us by the hand from like the airport all the way into the game day. Yeah. So that really helped us get acclimated into that environment. Then we get there, and the first team we see on the field is Arizona. And we really had a bad experience the year before, okay? Not them, not the players, not their coach, but their fans. And so what happened is, and then they're losing. So we're like, this is really good for us, because we're thinking, on one hand, we're thinking we want payback, we want to play them. But on the other hand, in the back of your mind, like, well, we're gonna have to face Francona and Barger, their reliever, because they're tough. Those guys were tough. So, and then going in there, and yes, you see the fans and the venue, and but you just gotta take care of business. And from that point, yeah.
Sam, you told me the story before, but I gotta ask you again. You had to play Arizona going into the final twice. You lose the first game, and I believe, was it Chuck Krim was the starter in that first loss against Arizona with the last two?
That's correct.
Right?
The first meeting where he was the losing pitcher.
So going into that second, or what would be the final game, there was an issue with who would pitch. Tell us that story.
Oh boy. Okay, well, so Coach Les got Scott Roberts and I together before that game, before the game 4, and he said, we're kind of low on pitching, so if we win, there's no bye, okay? And so he said, so I'm going to start either one of you. And I'm thinking, I haven't started a game since JV at Castle High School, you know what I mean? And so, okay, whatever. Well, my job would have been the same, which is just throw as hard as I can, as long as I can, and then just go as long as I can. And it's not like I lost sleep overnight over anything. But as it stood, we or played out, we lost, so we had a bye. And then so that's the thing that you said. There's a misunderstanding there. We didn't play back to back. Arizona had to win one more time the next night, and then we played 2 nights later.
So that final game, it was Scott Roberts got the start, then you came in. That was the beginning of the bomb squad, wasn't it?
Oh no! So what happened is, because we lost, it was a day of rest, right? Another day of rest. So David Smith was able to start the final.
Okay,
yeah.
But did you get on the mound in that game too?
Yes, I did. In later part of the game, and what's interesting is the irony, the way it played out, is that I let a guy on. I think it was like the 8th or 9th inning, and then he stole second base, and so then Brian Duquette came in to relieve me, and it's the first time Brian had ever relieved. And oddly enough, he became a reliever after that. Kind of started his career there as a stopper. Kind of switched roles.
I think Tiff got a question.
Sam, just the experience, like you said, about playing in Omaha, and 40 years back since it happened, got to play for one of the greatest coaches, not just for Rainbow Baseball, but for UH history, and Les Murakami. Do you have a favorite story about Coach Les?
Oh boy, there's a lot of favorite stories, but Don Robs once asked me to say a story, on a broadcast, radio broadcast. And the thing I had to tell him is what I owe to Coach Les. We all owe something to Coach Les, okay? But I went out to tryouts. I walked on, and what happened is I showed up injured because I had been playing AJA ball, local ball here, and I ran into a wall, going for a foul ball. And so I go out to the tryouts, and he could tell that I have a bandage on my wrist. And then he says, "So what?" And I said, "Well, I can't throw and I can't swing the bat," because I was a position player at the time. I wasn't a pitcher. He says, "Well, this is a tryout, but just go run around." But what he didn't realize, I couldn't run either because I had banged up my knee. So he tells me, "So you're trying out and you can't throw, you can't hit, and you can't run." And I say, "Yes." But he still gave me a second chance, and I owe him a lot. We all have our stars that way. He gave me, and then he redshirted me. And so that's a second chance, and then he allowed me to try pitching. So that's 3 chances Coach Les gave me.
Speaking of pitching, Sam, I always wanted to ask you this, because I remember hearing about this from the media, is that you always pitch, at least in your UH days, you always pitch from the stretch, right? No,
yes.
Was that just a personal preference in terms of, I got a better speed on the ball? What was the reason that you kind of always did it that way?
That's an interesting question, because that particular window, a lot of people were doing that for the first time. And it might have been Carl Fruitani, but it was more a matter of cut down on moving parts. Keep it simple. And what you call. Nowadays I end up being a pitching coach, and after that at Castle, and you try to what they say call change your looks, change your rhythm, but with the coming from the stretch was kind of the opposite. It was just keep it consistent, kind of thing. Yeah. So that's what it was.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Sam. I heard you're the official historian of this team, so you don't mind if we touch bases with you again, because I'm always fascinated with the history of those days of UH baseball, and particularly that 1980 team.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. Thank you.
All right, Sam Kakazu. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
Take care. Well, that was good. That is, I could talk with these guys forever, because, one of the things about UH baseball is that it has such that history, and those are the beginnings of what became the popularity of UH baseball. The late 70s with Tatsuno, that 80 team, and then shortly after that, it was televised games, the stadium was built. So that was really the origins, and it's been a generation of people that remember how powerful and dominant those teams were.
Well, and like both Eric and Sam said, that it was actually the 79 team that, talent-wise, was a little bit better than that 1980s team, but everybody remembers that 80s team, and coincidentally, when you told me that you were going to have both Eric and Sam join us here on the 15th a couple of weeks ago, and kind of looking at how the timeline would have been for college baseball, and would have gone from regionals to super regionals. Today would have been day 3 of the 2020 College World Series, which unfortunately got canceled due to the coronavirus pandemic. But just kudos to you, and I said this to you a couple weeks ago, just that somehow things play out, and we didn't realize that we were going to have these 2 former athletes join us during what would have been the remembrance of them being in Omaha 40 years ago. So pretty cool. Good job.
Yeah. I looked at the calendar and said, hopefully we can get them on this Monday. Hey, this is a great show. Let's wrap it up with Tiff's Corner here at the podcast.
All right, Dave. So how much would you spend for a basketball?
How much would I spend?
How much would you spend for basketball if your son asked you for a new basketball?
Not more than $30.
All right. Well, Spalding came out earlier last week, and they have a Kobe Bryant Black Mamba basketball, which unveiled last week Monday for $124.
Ouch. Does it add life? Does it give me the handles and ability that Kobe had?
You? No. Me? Not at all. But I get the 24 because of the jersey number, but you want to have kids play the sport. Why not make it a little bit cheaper and just keep it at $24, or just add the 24 with his daughter's number 2 and make it 26, or do something like that. But to make a basketball $124, I just don't get it.
Hey,
I really don't get it.
I sure as heck wouldn't buy shoes for that much. I don't think I'd buy a ball for that much.
We've talked about the NBA coming back next month in Orlando. We've talked about the NHL as well. How about the MLS? We talked about this earlier before we had our two guests. 26 clubs at the ESPN Wide World of Sports over in Orlando, the Walt Disney World. They're going to do kind of a World Cup format with the group stage, and then they advance it, into the knockout stage to make it to the final. It's a little bit different than what they do with their regular season. Something a little bit more innovative, but it sounds like it's something that could work, and I'll for sure be watching some football. And I don't know about you, but it's live sports. It may not be as major of a sport as, say, football or baseball or basketball, but it's a sport that's coming back.
Hey, I'm watching golf, so I'll watch anything, man. Anything live, bring it on. I started watching UFC, for crying out loud.
And speaking of UFC, one of our two congratulations that we got to give out, former Waimanalo resident Tyson Nam, this past Saturday, part of the UFC Fight Night in Vegas, his first ever UFC win, and it came in just 32 seconds of a TKO.
I saw that. It was a kick.
It was a kick, yes.
Ooh. UFC is vicious. Ooh.
And also, our final congrats goes out to Carter Lowen, who signed an undrafted free agent deal with the San Diego Padres. We mentioned about Jeremy Wu Yellen signing with the Red Sox, and also the former Gatorade Player of the Year out of high school this past season out of Waiakea, Colette Rosario. He signed he was drafted in the 5th round. But again, congratulations to all these Hawaii players, whether they're high school products or they go through the UH system. It's a little bit different of a time. You're not signing for a whole lot of money, but you get to continue your dream of possibly making it to the big leagues.
And hopefully, we might see some American baseball.
Yes.
Who knows? Awesome. All right. That's pretty cool. Ready to go with the Tiff's Corner. And that'll do it for another Dave and Tiff podcast. We want to thank our guest from that 1980 College World Series team for the University of Hawaii, Sam Kakazu, who was a relief pitcher and also pitched in that very final game against Arizona, and Eric Tokunaga, starting shortstop, was selected to the 1980 World Series All-Tournament team along with Colin Tanabe and Kimo Perkins, and now currently the head coach at Farrington and doing well over there. I want to thank them for joining us today, and congratulations to that entire team. It's a legacy that will live on forever. It's hard to believe it was 40 years ago. It was before you were born, Tim. That's how long
it was. So yes, it was. So it was a lot of fun to listen to both Eric and Sam kind of talk about those 79 and 80 teams. And like you said, it wasn't born yet, but it's always fun to go back through memory lane and to not just see the pictures or read the stories, but to talk firsthand with players who were part of that special squad.
Indeed it was. So we're going to take a break next week. So the next podcast will come out the last week of June. So we'll take a week off. Have a great Father's Day weekend coming up. That's for me. Woo! Father's Day
That's for
weekend.
you, Dave. Happy early Father's Day. Yes.
Yahoo! So thanks to Tiff Wells. This is Dave Kawada saying so long until 2 weeks from now. Take care.
Bye-bye.